Ladies and gentlemen,
the most transformative sport event on earth is about to begin.
Those who are in the stadium are on their feet.
It's just a long, niggly climb.
Because it is desperation now. And there it is.
Gold! What a result! Another remarkable athlete about to write another chapter in Paralympic history.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. Each week we share stories from athletes and people behind the scenes to help you have more fun watching the games. I am your host, Jill Jarris, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Allison Brown. Allison, hello, how are you?
As I mentioned to you before we started recording, I had a bit of a test event this week. Had to go to a concert, super hot, and I learned a few things.
Yes.
Bring a towel to sit on, not because the seat is wet, because you will sweat through your clothes when it's 95 degrees out, and that's uncomfortable. Wear shoes that you can take off and put on subtly so that it gives you a chance to dry out your feet.
Good one.
And always have a barrette or ponytail holder with you at all times. Even though I have short hair, it was not short enough. Yeah, because once you start sweating, that hair on the back of your neck. See, I thought my short hair would have been short enough that wouldn't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's 95 degrees out, it bothers you.
So a lot of stuff changes.
I had a lot of learnings, and I'm very pleased with myself.
I am still worried about what to do with my head, like visor, sun hat, whatever. I don't know what to do with that.
I have a solution for you.
Okay.
You need a pith helmet with a little fan built in.
Oh, with a fan built in.
Like the French Foreign Legion. The French Foreign Legion had those little hats for a reason.
Well, we still have time to figure it out. So
I'm sending you a pith helmet.
When I think pith helmet, I think they are like impermeable and no,
but they
air
breathe. They breathe. There are sections of breathe.
All right. Well, you know who also has to breathe, but just once. Is our guest this week. This week we're speaking with para swimmer Jamal Hill. Jamal won bronze at the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics in the men's 50-meter freestyle S9 class. That is a class for swimmers with coordination affected at a low level in the arms and legs, a high degree of weakness in one leg, or the absence of limbs. Jamal is also the founder of Swim Uphill, a foundation dedicated to teaching low and middle income people of color how to swim. Take a listen.
Jamal Hill, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to talk to you again.
Happy to be here, ready to keep the flame alive.
So you are short distance specialist. We were joking about splash and dash when we met. Why is short distance work for you?
Short distance works best for me, I think, because of my neuropathy. So I have a hereditary neuropathy called Charcot-Marie-Tooth, and that leads to neurological and muscular fatigue. So short distances are about as long as I'm able to even hold it kind of sorted together.
And because of your particular disability, are you starting in the water or do you dive in?
I do. I dive in. I start from a diving platform. Depending on who you ask, though, it's not much of a dive. It's a little bit of a topple into the water.
But I understand that you've worked with coaches to rework your start to give you more power off of the blocks. So break down how that works for us.
I wish it was an exact science. My body is a little bit different every day. So with my disease, it's progressive, right? So every day is a little bit better and a little bit worse. That said, we've definitely tried different things. We've worked with different coaches to work out starts that are not as traditional. One we have is kind of called like a slingshot. So imagine a 3-point stance instead of a 4-point stance, one hand down and 2 feet down. And then one arm is kind of wound up backwards behind me. And I swing that arm forward to help get my legs and my body up into the air and create some forward momentum. The only tough part about that is 3-point stance requires a lot more balance than a 4-point stance. So even with that, I'm not always able to get away with that just because I'm liable to fall over. So I kind of go back and forth between the two and just fill it out on any given day.
Are there limits to what you're allowed to do?
Limits to what we're allowed to do? That's a really great question. Quite frankly, I don't know. You can't do a backflip into the pool. Like, you can't start backwards from a diving block. I know that's against the rules. You have to be facing the water. And it also has to be it has to be a flat start. So the official will say, take your mark. Once they say take your mark, you're not allowed to move anymore. Outside of that, there really aren't any rules. You know, you're not allowed to do a walking start or a running start or anything like that. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, so with 50 meters, do you breathe?
Yes, I breathe. I'll breathe probably one time down the pool. Every now and then I'll throw in a second breath if it's just really hurting, but about one time down at the 35-meter mark is where I plan to take my breath.
Do you have a side that
I'm
you
breathing
breathe on,
to the
or
right
does it
for
matter?
sure. I'm a righty.
Does that change day to day?
No, that doesn't change. As far as the 50-meter freestyle goes, just one time down the pool, if I'm breathing to the right. You know, in a longer race, double that would be 100 meters. That's about as long as I get. I might have ambidextrous breathing patterns on that, but just the 50-meter, yeah, only to the right. Just one turn and right back straight down to business.
Are you aware of where everybody else is in the pool?
That short answer is no. It's impossible to know where everyone is. The race is just too short. You can get a sense of people next to you from your peripherals. So usually my thing is if you can see someone, that means that you're losing. They are definitively in front of you. But if you kind of are catching a little bit of splash in your peripheral, that means you're probably neck and neck with someone. And then if you don't see anything in your peripheral, that means you are well ahead.
Do you have a lane that you prefer?
A preference of lane? Not really. If someone said, I guess maybe people would say lane 4, because that's usually the top seed. Coming in will be lane 4, and then it'll be 3 and 5 will be the second and third seeds. And then 2 and 6, 1 and 7 and 8. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to count here. So people usually say lane 4 just because it's the top seed, but the reality is, I guess you can kind of control your reality. If you swim fast, you'll be the top seed, but they're all created equally. As long as you got to land in the pool, we're gonna make some magic with that.
Talk a little bit about the kick and how the kick works for you and how you make that happen within your body.
Works. So with my neuropathy, I have 0% nerves from my knees to, I have 0% nerves. They're there. They're just not talking to anything. From my knees to the soles of my feet, I have 0% nerve capacity. So it feels like I'm walking around on my knees all the time. So you can imagine kicking. Really, I'm only kicking from my quads. That said, my stroke is not incredibly driven by the legs, for better or for worse. But the legs do play a really important time. Kicking plays a really important time in terms of timing, right? So the arms and the legs have to be perfectly timed at certain parts of the stroke, regardless of, if you have nerve ability or no foot or one arm. Certain elements of the stroke have to still be timed pretty perfectly. No difference than playing a game of Dance Dance Revolution. If you don't hit the side arrow right when the side arrow comes over the screen, it goes, and every time it goes, that means that you're swimming a little bit slower.
What does that mean for muscle development from the knee down?
Muscle development from the knee down is pretty much non-existent in my younger years. And I know that's kind of controversial, right? You're such a young guy. I don't know. But in my younger years, I tried everything, calf raises, this, that, and the other. Yeah, muscle development from the knee down is pretty much non-existent. I'm looking down at my legs right now. Let me recheck and see if anything has changed. Yeah, it's pretty much non-existent. So it doesn't really matter how many calf raises or, I don't know, lower leg strengthening exercises I do. There's not really much muscle development. That said, I do spend a lot of time stretching my feet, stretching my toes. It's indicative of the disease that I have for the feet to curl, for the toes to curl and the feet to almost look as though they've been bound. So I spend a lot of time just trying to keep them open, keep them floppy. just to kind of have them taking up as much surface area as possible.
Are you then also kind of limited in what quad strength exercising you can do?
I don't know. Limited is an interesting way to phrase it. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not squatting 500 pounds or anything like that. We usually, like, stay away from, weights and things. But for what we've designed my resistance program to do in terms of my quads, no, I don't really have much limitations when it comes to the quads. It's more of like this holistic experience when I'm speaking about the legs, thinking about, okay, balance, right? Like, I'm still going to have to be able to balance, because even though it feels like I'm standing on my knees, there's still a lot of leg down there that I have to consider.
Growing up, you did a lot of training with able-bodied swimmers. That was where you were focused. How was that helpful? Was that not helpful? How do you look at that now in terms of being a Paralympian versus competing against able-bodied swimmers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the way I feel about it could be summed up to this day. I'm like, oh, never trying to toot my horn too much. But like, I run an amateur pro team. So people who are Olympic, Paralympic hopefuls, most of the guys that I train with today are fully able-bodied. So from a kid being able-bodied to going through my disease and then being in the adaptive bodied but still training with able-bodied persons, even for a lot of that time, doing it and nobody knowing that I even had a disability, it really, a few things. One, for me, I think like it just always bred an energy of like, no excuses. If I'm here and I'm doing this, I just want to do it. Not to say that obviously you want to have a fair sport of a fair field or pool of play, in terms of competition. But I also think there's just a degree of I'm here to do it. Like I don't care. I want to adapt. I want to learn. And then also just competing against fully able-bodied athletes, I lose a lot. Like I get beat a lot, pretty much all the time. Like from high schoolers, sometimes age groupers. Kids are fast, you know what I'm saying? Like, high schoolers are fast. So what I tell parents is like, yo, put them in the program, like, one thing about it, if your kid is the worst swimmer in the club, like, he's only going to be the worst, or she's only going to be the worst swimmer until there's a new worst swimmer. There's always somebody who's going to be worse eventually. That goes to say whatever their adaptive level is, I think that a strong attempt should be made to still just put them in just regular recreation, especially when it comes to swimming, because there are much fewer adaptive elements and changes that need to be made for someone to be able to swim in an aquatic environment or compete in an aquatic environment if they already know how to swim. So, yeah, I think just in general, it's good to get out and compete against people that, quite frankly, are better than you. Yeah, like I said, I tell people all the time, like, I lose way more races. Like, pretty much I lose 90% of the races I compete in. I just happen to win, the few important ones that are really kind of memorable. But if it wasn't for like that other 90%, then there would be no 10% for us to talk about.
Going through that, it's a kind of a mental training as well, isn't it? Like, how does that affect your mental approach to what you do?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the season, right? Because our mental state is constantly in flux, constantly changing. A lot of times, if I'm in a demotivated energy or state, getting out there and getting my ASS whooped by some kids helps me get motivated again. You know what I mean? It's a good driver. It's like, okay, I got to tighten it up here. But then even more than that is just mentally, it's a mental net positive. I'm never coming to these meets and leaving like, oh, man, like, I suck. Or, oh, man, I couldn't have did. They're lessons, it's like, it's all practice. Everything, even world championships, in this Olympic, Paralympic game, the reality is like, it only matters what you do at one competition every 4 years. Like, that's what the strength of your career, like, that's really going to be the foundation of the strength of your career for most people, that are still doing this kind of athletic endeavor. So, it's just all practice, like I show up, I make mistakes, I get disqualified, I get beat, I have swimsuits tear on me, I have an ugly swim, I practice shaking the hand of the person next to me. It's all just practice, so I feel like by the time I do get to that 10% of races or that 5% or that 1% of races that are, like pretty cataclysmic when it comes to a career perspective, there's not really anything that could go wrong that I feel like could throw me off. I've already been to a swim meet and showed up 5 minutes beforehand and had to rush. I've already been to a swim meet and had a terrible start. I've already been to a swim meet and had a suit tear on me. It's just a matter of, again, kind of having that preparedness to control what I know I can control and to be prepared, you know, should the things that I can't control become not ideal. I'm prepared to be able to move with confidence and calmness during these times.
So speaking of the one race in 4 years, talk a little bit about your experience in Tokyo.
In Tokyo?
Did you feel like that was, I mean, the result was good, but did you feel good?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, right? It kind of gets, that's a really loaded question. I'll tell you this, when I finished the race in Tokyo, because I had 2 races. I had a 100-meter freestyle, which I swam up a division, a disability class. So probably for laymen, it would be easier to understand, like, it's like I fought up a weight class. You know, if you think about fighting in weight classes, like I swam up a class just to kind of get the nerves out. And then my preeminent event, the 50-meter freestyle, when I finished that race, the biggest emotion I felt was relief. Like, I was just relieved it was over. Even more relief once I realized I had earned a medal. It's tough, you know. It's like there's a lot of pressure in those moments, you know. I mean, everyone's got these dreams, right, especially on that platform. First, the dream starts off, can I make it to trials? Can I make a team? Can I make a podium? Can I earn a gold? You know, like every level, the goal really kind of evolves to the environment. And so when you finally get there, you got to think for pretty much most people, at that time it had been 5 years, right, because it's COVID. So for the last 5 years, myself and everyone else there, their whole life was built around this. Our family, our friends, the local businesses giving us, you know, free lunch. You know, all these people have invested into this 5-year vision, and the harsh reality is it's competition. You know, like everybody's going to win to some degree, but like only 3 people are making it on the podium. That's just the reality of it. So once that time finally comes, yeah, it's really overwhelming. Like, if I didn't have such a strong mental performance coach and team around me to help me throughout that time, and even a lot of those practices that we talk about or those swim meets, if I hadn't been at these swim meets and like been able to be like, wow, oh, Jamal Hill does get nervous, you know, like this is what I look like when I'm nervous, or this is how I act when I'm nervous, even if I don't realize it. It really just helped me be in a place where I'm like, hey, I'm grateful to be here, once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'm going to just do my best. I'm going to focus on those things that I can, let go of everything else. And yeah, once the race was over, I was relieved. I mean, coming into the wall, I described to you a little bit, you know, what the perception visually can be. I could see that the person to my left had beat me to the wall, and I knew I had beat the person to my right. So I was someplace between 2nd and 7th place. But in that moment, yeah, I didn't want to feel like, wow, like I'm really a winner now. I won a medal, or dang, I'm really a loser. I didn't win. So when I touched the wall, I just kind of congratulated myself. I knew I had swam the best I'd ever swam, even without seeing the time. And yeah, I planned on just like shaking my opponent's hands and leaving the pool and not even looking up at the scoreboard. I didn't want to know. But then I heard my teammates calling my names from the stands. So that's a pretty good indicator that you've made the podium. And lo and behold, there it was, Jamal Hill, Rolls gold medal, Team USA, 3rd place. And yeah, it was just relief. That's like, I wouldn't even say joy. Like, I don't even know if I was happy. It was just relief. Like, man, whew, you know.
How does that build up compare to the build up for Paris then? Because now you've done it and people know what you can do.
And you only have 3 years.
And no COVID.
And that's a great question. I would say leading into Paris for other people, definitely. Even going into Tokyo, I'm kind of like the not so underdog. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to say it. Like, I'm like the not so underdog. I don't think people ever expect me to, like, they just expect me to do good. You feel like it's not like, oh, this is the reigning champion, world record holder, like gold or nothing. But then it's also like, oh, but like it's Jamal though. You feel me? So like he could win gold, but like we expect him to do good. Like, we expect him to at least be on the podium. Like, it's, any given day, he's going to get that job done. So I think that's probably, like, the outside perspective, kind of like the not-so underdog, like, I'm Team USA's best chance for sure. But for me, yeah, I'm really kind of chilling. I would say at this point, I'm thinking about Paris 0%. Going to Tokyo, one thing I learned is when it comes time for that race and, those last 2-3 days before, all those emotions and excitement, you'll have an influx of it. You don't have to try and, like, manufacture it in advance. So that's kind of the farthest thing out of my mind. The only real excitement I have for Paris is that my parents, my family will be there. They'll be able to see me compete. They'll be able to see me compete and earn gold. But, yeah, other than that, you got to show up and take it day by day. Yeah, like Jamal 5, 6, 7 years ago would have been telling you, hey, check me out in Tokyo 2020, check me out in Paris 2024, check me out in LA 2028. I'm going to have 16 gold medals. But, this Jamal is just like, it's going to be what it's going to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm showing up every day, I'm putting in the work. When the time comes, I'm not going to accept anything less than what I deserve. And I'm just happy that people I love will be able to be in an auditorium and experience it firsthand.
What helped you get from old Jamal to current
Time.
Jamal in terms of that mindset?
Time is always time, isn't it?
so then you can relate when we say, "Oh, look at these kids. They'll figure it out one day,
man,
right?"
That's it. Like, it's just time. And this goes for everybody, right? Like, we live life and, like, we all have these amazing plans. Well, maybe not all of us. The people I hang out with usually have amazing plans, though. So, like, they've got amazing plans and they're going to do this, whether it be family or personal or spiritual or career, the dimensions that actually make up what would be a wealthy life, right? But then you realize, man, if I really had it all figured out, if I really knew all the answers, if I really... like, there would be no point, right? Like, if it was just what I say goes all the time, if I just knew what was going to happen tomorrow or the next 5 years, there would be no point. You wouldn't have to live it. It would already be, so I don't say that to say everyone needs a compass direction. You need to be moving towards... One thing about Jamal, I'll tell you, if you're not on nothing, you need to get on something. Like, you need to get on something. Choose a direction. And, like, understand that once you have those goals in those directions, like 1, 2, 3 degree adjustments are important. But when you span 1, 2, 3 degrees out over a lifetime, you're talking about completely different lives here. You know what I mean? So in the short term, a 1, 2, 3 degree shift is, it can seem inconsequential. However, again, when you take that across 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you're on the opposite side of the world. You're on the opposite side of the universe in terms of maybe what your vision for your life was. So I think that's just like kind of what I stay conscious about. And then even something I mentioned earlier, people will laugh at me a little bit, but all the stuff that I say, I usually take it from old people. I take it from old heads. They say it, and I'm like, oh, that's good. That's mine. I'm going to be repeating that. But one of my mentors said to me recently, he said 2 things that I thought were really profound. He said, number 1, if I could go back in life and fix every mistake that I ever made, the only thing that would happen is I would make a whole new set of mistakes. And I was like, that's powerful, because how often do any of us dwell on what we wish we had known before we knew it, right? So if we could go back and I could just change everything, trust me, you would live a lifetime and you would still want to go back and change it all again, right? And then the second thing that he said to me was, it actually was about youth. It was about age. And so I joked about this earlier. His advice to me was like, Jamal, you're about 30 right now. People are going to lie to you. They're still probably going to be lying to you for the next 5 years. Like, you are not young. You're younger than me, but, like, you're not young. Maybe, if you're lucky, you've already lived a third of your entire life. So if I just came up to anybody and I said, money is easy, right? Everybody speaks money. If you had all your money and I came and I took 33% of your money, you would probably be like, that's not a little bit. Like, that's a lot. That's more than Uncle Sam for some people. You know what I mean? So that's when you ask me again, like, what's changed, like, just kind of having that perspective of, like, okay, yeah, again, you know, like, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, we all know, like, the older you get is not young, but also just kind of challenging this notion that, and especially just the way today's world moves, 30 years is not really that young. 20 years old, I hate to tell you, like, you're really not a kid. You're never going to have life all the way figured out. You still got a lot of experiences, but it's like, you got to be moving in some type of direction. You got to be moving with purpose. You can't just be aimless, like, I've got time. I'm only in my 20s, you know, I'm only in my 30s, or I'm only in my late teens. And I just think that's just something that actual young people, at least in our society, in our culture, that's not something that's put in front of their face. I feel like they're usually taught, like, oh, you can get started later, like, which is true, but time is of the essence, and later isn't always promised.
This is a good time to ask, what is the bumper sticker on your sunroof?
Oh, success is my duty. So I don't even gotta look up. I already know success is my duty. So yeah, this is. I'll put this up like I was probably like, if I'm 30 now, I'm very financially responsible. So I like nice things, but I have them for a good amount of time. I've had this car maybe at least like, I don't know, 6 to 8 years now. So this was like 23, 22 to 24-year-old Jamal. I'm like, I need to be reminded every single day. Whenever I open up my moonroof, like, I'll look up and it'll be there. So it's there. It's subconscious. But, yeah, I think success is all of our duty. But, again, like I said, success comes in as many strokes for as many folks as there is. And there are dimensions of life, obviously, outside of competitive swimming or financial endeavors. And I'll be the first one to tell people, personally, I think one of my greatest wealths in life right now, like money or otherwise, anything, is my relationship with my partner. That's something that, again, had you asked me 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't even put it on the list. You know what I mean? Like, just because you don't necessarily have the appreciation for certain things. So, yeah, success. Success is what you make it. Success is going to be how you define it. And just know that the finish line is always moving forward. So every goal that you accomplish and every Paralympic medal that you earn, man, just try and enjoy it as good as possible, because looking back on it never feels the same. You know, you asked me, Jill, like, kind of coming into Paris, you already been here before, like, going into Paris, all the things that were motivating me then, they don't motivate me no more. You know what I mean? Like, I've already been signed by the biggest swim brand in the whole world. I already did a deal with Speedo. Already been on that Paralympic podium. I'm already the fastest person in U.S. history. I already know I'm going to make the team. Or, like, there's so many things that on the first go-round were a mystery. I had to prove it. I had to show that it was real. And now on this time around, it's like, how am I defining success? Like, what's getting me up and keeping me going? Because if you haven't been there, a lot of that ignorance creates a fantasy, which really helps drive fanatic behavior, which in some ways is necessary. But after you've lived it in real life and you got the real life to go with the fantasy, okay, but now how do I get crazy about this again? Because I know the reality. Like, I know what's waiting on me on the other side. So, I want some of what's waiting on me on the other side, but I don't want all of what's waiting on me on the other side. But I still got to get there. I still got to cross that finish line. I still got to honor myself and my journey and all these people. So what's the why? What's the why now? How has that why evolved?
What did getting signed by Speedo change for you in terms of your day-to-day reality?
Yeah, that was great. In terms of my day-to-day reality, I was eating out more. Yeah.
I mean, did it just take that pressure?
Yeah, I would say this, like, it definitely, so number one, definitely, like, when I got signed by Speedo, it definitely took a level of financial pressure off, for sure. I would say, like, my experience in Paralympic space is not traditional. I'm a hustler, so it's like, one thing, I may not always have the most, but, like, I'm never not gonna have nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm never just standing by, rubbing my hands, waiting on a rich grandfather named Speedo to come and sign me for a check, So I think that was the main thing, just kind of like it changed some of my day to day. It definitely changed my savings account. Like I said, I'm a real kind of just frugal guy, so it changed my savings account a lot. And it also it changed my athletic performance in the pool, because I was getting performance incentives for breaking records. So I think I went out and broke, like, in my 2 years with Speedo, I think I might have broke like 23 records. Like I went crazy. That's a good, so like in 1 year, the most records I broke was, I think, 17 or 18 records. So I just went absolutely berserk. But then, so everything has duality, and this is something that I speak about. It's like, for all the great that came with Speedo, there was a lot of drawback that came with Speedo. Like when you have a dream and you have a fantasy, we only ever envision the positive, right? Like, it's going to be like this. Great. Like, none of this would matter if I could just have this amount of money. And yeah, that's just kind of not how life works, really, So after I had that experience, and again, like, I'm a little bit more known in the swim world now, things like this, like that, it just, our vision for the future and kind of like how I wanted to see my career grow, and the things in swimming that I was also affiliated with from the Swim Uphill Foundation, which is an internationally recognized organization by the United Nations and things like that. Yeah, I just kind of realized, like, swimming is just, what we know, like, swimming is just not a big money sport. It's like, that's just what it is. So even me, I think when I was signed with Speed, I was probably like a top 10% earner in all of swimming in all of the world. And, without going into small details, I was like, for, like a high 5-figure, very low 6-figure contract. Yeah, and the reason why I ended up leaving was just because it was pretty much going to be the same thing for my whole career. And it was going to be absolute exclusivity, and so just understanding my responsibility to the Swim Uphill Foundation, I couldn't in good conscience sign away my career and sign away this mission to help 1 million people learn how to swim every single year for $100,000. That's not going to help us accomplish our mission. So that's what it was like. That was some of the amazing positives. And then that's what it was like. That was some of the drawbacks. That was like why I ultimately ended up deciding this next chapter of my swim career will not be with that company.
Give the plug for Swim Uphill, because it's a great organization. I was reading up about it, and it's so wonderful.
And how you got hooked up with the UN. How did, like, the UN calls one day and says, hey, Jamal,
kinda. It was funny. I was hosted, so I do a lot of things in the aquatic space, not just swim uphill teaching lessons, but we also support instructors, we support lifeguards, we support aquatics directors and managers. And so what I do is, and one of my entrepreneurial endeavors to support the aquatics industry, we reach out to key people around the world, influential people around the world, and I'll leverage who I am to get interviews with them, to essentially interview them and bring their insights and information back to directors and leadership in the aquatic space to improve their facilities and their services to the community. And so I reached out to the Envoy on Youth of the United Nations for an interview, and we got the interview, and in the months to follow, her team kept sending me about this United Nations position for young people. And in my thought, I'm like, okay, yeah, like, I'm like late 20s, mid 20s, but like, I'll send it to, like, we got high schoolers, college students, I'll send it out. And eventually they were like, hey, can we just get on the call with you? We got on the call, and they're like, Jamal, we need you to understand, according to the United Nations, a young person is anyone from like 22 to 35. That's how young people are defined internationally. I'm like,
if you ever see who's in the United Nations, that
right?
Like,
Like, they're like, no, you're still a young person until you 36, 37. So it's like, oh, they're like, yeah, so we want you to apply to do this. We want you to come and to have this office. And I'm like, oh, well, you should have just said that, because I was missing, like, the subliminal there. But that's literally how it happened. Like, I reached out for an interview, and then after we got connected and they learned about me and what I was doing, I was invited to be a part of, I think, what may have been the last cohort of young leaders for the United Nations, in which they take 17 young people from around the world, and we hold this office for 2 years. So that's how the United Nations thing happened.
And what does that actually mean, and what are you doing?
That's a really, really great question. So I think the first thing that we do as a part of this office is we have an undying commitment to our specific causes and organizations. So to just think about our project is still what we're doing, but now we've set it on top of this table that is the United Nations, right? So that's first and foremost. Second to that is inner collaboration. Like I said, these are some of the 17 youngest and kind of like most inspirational, forward, politically moving, exciting. There's only 2 people from the U.S., one of them and another one, her name is Alyssa. She just joined the NASA astronaut program. These are the type of young people and figures around the world. So being able to collaborate and to really like combine efforts, right? So it's a great play for international campaigns and things like that. Specifically speaking to the United Nations, we're obligated to come into New York, which is where the United Nations headquarters is, about once every year. And when we're there, ultimately we're doing speaking engagements, and we're really there to like kind of poll and be the voice of young people, which, as you said, the United Nations, don't quote me on this, but the average age is definitely over 50, 100%. You know, so we're really there to, again, be advocates, no different than any other person that is holding some form of political office. I'm nothing more than a speaker or an amplifier of these international constituents of young people.
What does life look like for you between now and the end of August?
That's easy. Yeah, between now and I thought you were gonna give me like the 5-year. I'm like, oh, honey, no. That's easy. We got a lot of press, a lot of media. You know, I do pretty good with press and media. I feel like all throughout the quad, but there's nothing like the last 2 months, right? Like now is when the athletes really matter. So we got that. We have Swim Uphill Foundation programs going right now. So right now we have a program called Swimming Out of Poverty. We're essentially teaching 60 kids from inner city Los Angeles who are literally on this is going to sound crazy, but they are literally on a trajectory to end up on Skid Row, statistically speaking. 80% of Skid Row, so Skid Row, for those of you who don't know, is the homeless mecca of Southern California. It's a collection, it's a downtown area, and it's where all of the government programs and assistance is located downtown. And so it's like if you've ever seen Tent City in Los Angeles, that's Skid Row. Most people don't know this. 80%, this is a quote, this is fact check this, factual. 80% of the people living on Skid Row, 80% of them come from this small pocket within the city of Los Angeles. They come from this small pocket in South Central Los Angeles. So when I found that out, I was blown away. I'm thinking, it's people all over. It's people from this city, from this state. No, 80% of them are from, and I'm not saying LA County, from a very specific section in the city of Los Angeles. So long story short, these kids that go to school in that community, 80%, most of the people that they're around will end up on Skid Row. And what we're doing is we are collaborating with the school, and we are giving them swim lessons throughout the whole month of May. And it'll culminate, their last day of school is the last day of May. It'll culminate on June 1st with the Learn to Surf Day. We'll take them all to the beach. We'll pretty much rent out the Santa Monica Pier Beach, and they'll have surf lessons. There'll be 120 kids at that, but that's a big thing. Trials are happening in June. And then, just a lot of media, a lot of interviews. I pretty much plan on being in the city. Otherwise, life is pretty much regular, like train, work, recover, investigate new opportunities, plan what I'm going to do after I finish swimming in Paris, what cafe I'm going to go get a glass of wine at. That's pretty much it.
I'll send you the list of what I found, Jamal.
I'd love to know about the classification process for you, because we've talked to other para athletes who have visible disabilities, and you have one that's not visible. So what is that like going through the initial process, and how often do you get retested?
That's a great thing that you just said there, Jill. And you're pretty much right. I'm gonna just tweak it a little bit. So technically, I do have a physical disability, right? Like I don't have a limb deficiency. But I do fall into, so in the Paralympics, there's only 2 types of athletes: physical disability, cognitive disability. So in swimming, pretty much, there's 14 classes. So S1 to S3 or 4 is going to be the most severely physically impaired. So that might be like a quadriplegic or someone in that space. from about 5 to 7 is usually going to be some type of like a small person, some type of like stature disability, or it may be again like maybe they only have use of their body completely from their waist up. 8 to 10 is going to be your least physically disabled. So I'm a 9, having neuropathy. And then 11 to 13 is visual impairment, and 14 is cognitive impairment. I get retested every 2 years. I get reclassified internationally every 2 years because I have a progressive disease. For some people, they get classified one time and it never changes. But because my disease is progressive, I get reclassed every 2 years. Just in terms of classification, what I would say is it's not a perfect system because it's being worked by people, and people are not perfect. So everyone's going to have bias. I believe that classifiers do their best. They have a very challenging job, especially when it comes to people like me. I feel like just because as unbiased as they want to be, there's going to be some natural bias, right? Like you said to yourself, you look at me like, this dude is shredded. Like, what's going on? And so that definitely that poses a challenge. Like that poses a challenge that I have to overcome, right? Because now I have maybe 90 minutes to help this stranger understand what a lifetime of disability has been like for me and how it truly affects me every day, regardless of how they perceive it visually on first sight. So that's really my experience, and that's a responsibility that I communicate to my teammates, just in classification. I'm not one to speak on it too much, but I know a lot of people believe a lot of cheating goes on in classification. I think cheating just goes on in general, so I don't think it's fair to like choose out classification. But what I do tell my teammates is that like the same way that people can cheat to try and, be disabled when they're not, I need you guys to be really conscious of cheating the opposite way. And cheating the opposite way means you're so used to like trying to be a superhero in real life and like always blending in, never needing nobody to help you. All these things that people with disabilities, me being one of them, build to cope with, right, in regular life, right? Not wanting to be a burden, not wanting to blend in. Now you're here. All those things that you tried to hide your whole life, you have to show them here. Like, if you don't show them here, that's cheating too. You know what I mean? Like, now your competition will probably be happy about it. But what you're doing is like, you're cheating yourself, you're cheating your team, and ultimately, you're cheating the movement because disability doesn't have any one shape, size, color, or ability level to it. It's going to look differently and affect everyone differently. So, the best thing that any of us can do is just be transparent with those journeys and those struggles and understand again that like classifiers have this near impossible job of again in 60 to 90 minutes they're trying to quantify an entire lifetime of disability into a competition so you can compete against other people who've had similar experiences and challenges. That said, again, it's not perfect. I've met people. One thing about classification, it's a learning experience. Like I've met everyone I've ever met that's gone through classification. I said they effed me this time and they got it right this time. And I think that just speaks to it. It's like it's as fair as it can be. It's like life. I don't think life is specifically picking on any one person. That's it. Sometimes it's fair. Sometimes it's not. That's what makes it fair.
Excellent. Well, Jamal, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jamal. You can find out more about Swim Uphill at swimuphill.org and on Facebook, X, and Insta. It is at Swim Uphill. Jamal will be competing at the U.S. Paralympic Trials this Thursday, June 27th in Minneapolis. Finals on Saturday and Sunday will be aired on CNBC in the U.S.
We have some updates for our TeePublic shop. So our affiliate link has been changed. So you'll see some new links. We got a new link and we'll have in the show notes. But this provides more support for the show anytime you buy any of our merchandise. So get your t-shirts, get your hats. Would you like a Keep the Flame Alive hat for your Paris trip?
I might need one of those.
You might need one of those. And we've got a couple new designs up specifically for Paris.
Yes.
I've been having some fun making some Paris designs.
Uh-oh. This is going to be exciting. I will have to check this out.
Or just go straight, keep the Flame Alive logo so we can find you in Paris.
Very important. I know a number of you will be there, and it will be helpful to be able to pick you out among the crowds of people that will be swarming around the city.
So our TeePublic shop, there is a link, as I said in the show notes, there is a link on our website, flamealivepod.com. And there's a cute little graphic in the middle there that links right there, and you can get all your fun t-shirts and merchandise. La piscine est beau.
The swimming pool was beautiful.
Well, I don't know how to do past tense now, Jill. Come on.
Well, the swimming pool is beautiful no matter I think where you go. The swimming pool is a very lovely thing. How about that?
When we are in Paris, I am going to live in the moment because I cannot speak in future or past tense.
All right, we do have last update from the U.S. Olympic Swimming Trials, which I stayed late. I meant to wrap this up last week, but I did stay late on Wednesday to see what happened in the finals. First off, we had women's 100-meter free final. Top 4 finishers go to the Olympics because they will compose the relay, and I think the top 2 get to do the individual event. That would be Kate Douglas, then Tori Husky, Gretchen Walsh, and Simone Manuel. And 0.69 seconds separated first place from fourth place. It was really, really fast race. Everything ended so quickly. That was really, really cool. That was the first time Simone was making the team again. So people were just beyond thrilled for her. There's so much love for Simone in the swimming community. That was just great to see that she has made a comeback because she's gone through some stuff over the last several years. Then we had men's 200-meter fly final. 17-year-old Thomas Heilemann won, which was very cool. Then
I think he's going to be the youngest member of the team.
I think so. There were some pretty young people there at trials, but did not quite make it. So I think you're right, and he's our young person. We'll see how he does in the pool at Paris. Then the event that I had to stay for, which was the women's 1500-meter free. I wanted to see how Katie Ledecky did because she was so dominant in her prelim heat. She was still dominant here. I thought Katie Grimes would be a much closer competitor because of Katie Grimes's ability to do distance swimming. But Katie Ledecky beat her by 20 seconds, which was just unreal to me.
I wonder if it's really a competition for second place. Like Katie Grimes is saying, I can't beat Katie Ledecky. I just have to beat everybody else. So is she saving herself a little bit? But yeah,
Could
not
be.
that Katie Ledecky doesn't win races normally by 20 and 30 seconds.
Right, but Katie Grimes also beat the third place finisher, Ashley Twitchell, by just under 11 seconds. So that is also a pretty big distance when you think about it. I am still so impressed that Katie Ledecky can go that fast and maintain that dominance for as many years as she had. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she does in Paris. There, it was very cute when they got their medals and they get to say we're going to Paris. They said it was like Katie Ledecky. I think whisper. There was a whisper in the ear of. Then they said Katie Squared is going to Paris.
Now, we'll talk about it when we talk about the Seine, but this will be interesting for Katie Grimes because she also qualified for open water swimming.
Yes.
And how is this going to work for her on the schedule if they have to move that open water swimming some distance away?
That will be something to look for. Definitely something to look for. Katie Ledecky did have something to say that really touched me when she said, look, they asked her basically like, how do you keep going? And she said, well, just don't be satisfied. We've always got to try to do better. So that really impressed me there. Women's 200-meter breast semifinals, our 46-year-old Gabrielle Rose finished last in the semifinals. She was 0.21 seconds off of first place, but she was still so amazingly proud of what she accomplished and using her platform to encourage women who are older, maybe mothers, to find time to exercise, build strength, because it's amazing what you can still do. What a great story she was in that comeback. But I think she's happy to go back to coaching her kids and not having a grueling training regimen. It sounded like the last year she really put herself through a lot of work to get to trial shape. Men's 200-meter breaststroke, Matthew Fallon got an American record with his swim. And then the night ended with the men's 100-meter free final. That relay team is going to be Chris Giuliano, Jack Alexi, Caleb Dressel, and Hunter Armstrong. And it was funny because they were doing the little stand-up bit with the camera for the audience in-house. Caleb came in third place out of the 4, and he was talking about, well, it took under 48 seconds to make this team. Then he was looking up at the board at the same time, and then he realized that the top 6 finishers finished under 48 seconds. And he was like, whoa, top 6 under 48. It was really that moment of just genuine shock and surprise and awe of how fast the men have gotten. That was pretty cool. Attendance there, it was the largest crowd yet at Lucas Oil Stadium. 22,209 people were there, and you could hear every moment of them.
Well, that 100 free, at least on television, just was such a joy to watch. The camaraderie and the appreciation of each other as swimmers. And poor Rowdy Gaines, I was like, please protect Rowdy. Don't give this man a stroke. He got, and then later, that following day for the 50, both the men's and the women's, with the 50 meter, Rowdy gets some rest. That was a really exciting trials, and he did fabulous as always. And such joy in U.S. swim trials. So much joy, which makes it such a great event. And you got to feel that.
Yes, exactly. And it was funny in some of the press conferences you started to hear over and over again, okay, it's time for training camp, because the swimmers will go and train for about 3 weeks together. And I think, but don't quote me, I believe they're going to Croatia, and they'll have their camp there. And everybody who has been to swim camp before was very excited to go back and to hang out, and they work very hard, but they also get to relax, and they make friends, and they just have a really good time hanging out with each other. And you could see how much, even though they compete against each other, how much everybody really likes being around each other. And that is very cool. Swimswam.com reported Katinka Hosu from Hungary did not qualify for her 6th Olympics.
How is she still swimming?
She is still swimming. She was trying to go for number 6. Unfortunately, did not make it. So that has been a big name in the past. So if you were looking to see what was going on with her, she sadly will not be in Paris. Other Paris news that was interesting that I saw in Le Monde is some female Japanese athletes will be wearing innovative kit developed by Mizuno. It's a fabric that prevents infrared photos from highlighting underwear and bodies of athletes, so that photographers cannot take explicit photos like during competition. So the kits will be used for volleyball, athletics, and table tennis for sure.
Fantastic that they came up with this. Disgusting that they needed to.
Yeah. And apparently it's sad that this is a problem, that women go out and compete, and then they somehow discover that their pictures of themselves while competing are being circulated on porn sites because of this infrared photography technology. So good on you, Mizuno. We talked within the last week of episodes that the opening ceremonies have been rehearsing on the Seine. They've been rehearsing the boat parade. The latest rehearsal has been postponed because there has been heavy rain over the last few weeks, and the river is flowing at 5 times its normal speed.
Oh, there goes the American team rushing by.
Well, then that just made me wonder, what happens if you aren't able to practice this at all? And what happens on the day of the ceremonies if you have a fast flowing river? What do you do? Do you have a plan A.5?
I guess the teams just speed on by and you hope for the best.
It's
Someone catch the Algerians. They're heading back home.
It's the fastest opening ceremonies on record. Uh, Not surprisingly, the rains have also negatively affected the water quality of the Seine. So again, we are seeing many headlines about that being an issue. I think in the next few weeks, Anne Hidalgo is scheduled to take her promised dip in the Seine.
I've been a fan of Anne Hidalgo through a lot of this planning, except for this.
You don't think the mayor should?
No, I think the mayor should. I just think this whole plan was not. They needed a better plan B. They needed a realistic, in place, concrete plan B for the Seine not being clean enough.
Yeah, I wonder if they went and looked at Rio and said, well, they didn't really have a plan B for their really poorly polluted stuff, and it went okay. So maybe this is going to be okay. I don't know if they have plan Bs and they're just not sharing them. Maybe that's one thing that they don't want to get into it.
Fair
But
enough.
hopefully they have something planned.
And I hope we're not going to kill the mayor by throwing her in the Seine. Can you imagine if she got sick? Oh, they would be hiding her. Like if she got some rash or something, we would not see her for days. And all of a sudden, like her gorgeous dresses, she'd come out like with a turtleneck in June. Mayor on, what has happened? I mean, it's not funny, but we have to just laugh at it because what else can we do? And we just worry about the athletes. That's what we'll do, and that doesn't help anybody.
Exciting news out of LA.
New venue plan. I'm surprised they released this now a little bit, but also not.
I wonder if some of it was the swimming trials were so successful in a football stadium that they wanted to get ahead of just tons of speculation about this.
So the new venue plan takes into account they're going to use fewer temporary stadiums and venues. They're going to avoid doing some renovations to existing stadiums so that in general there's going to be a lot of cost savings. I saw a lot of numbers getting thrown around because they were counting cost savings and revenue increases and mixing them together. So take with a grain of salt some of the dollars that you're seeing, because I saw anywhere from 10 million in savings to 100 million of cost benefit when you combine savings and increase revenue. So it's going to cost less. They're going to make more money in this. So the big move is that athletics will be moved to the first week and swimming moved to the second week of the calendar because they're going to put the swimming in SoFi Stadium.
Which is going to be amazing.
Which means up to 30,000 fans will be able to get tickets for every session of swimming. The reason they have to make the move is because the opening ceremony is in SoFi and they need that extra week to actually construct the pools, which makes perfect sense. So this is actually going to be huge. I mean, I can't remember a time where this was the schedule.
No, I can't either.
So will that help swimming, hurt swimming with athletics, vice versa? So that'll be interesting. Another big thing, softball and canoe slalom will be in Oklahoma City.
I'm not surprised about the canoe slalom because they do have a training center there, an Olympic course available. That makes me happy that they are utilizing that instead of building something new in LA, which ideally for the sport, you want to have more venues, but Southern California also has an issue with drought. So why put a water heavy venue into a place that probably can't support that realistically and keep that open long term? Softball made me a little sad because I really wanted to see it in Dodger Stadium. I thought, oh, we're moving. I mean, granted, it's going to be at the university, right?
Yes.
And powerhouse in softball. Great. They're going to have a wonderful softball stadium, but I really wanted them to have a bigger venue because I think the market's there.
I do like that. At least if you're shooting a sport out of LA, you're going to have two sports so that people could go to multiple events if they decide to travel to Oklahoma City. Gymnastics is going to move to the crypto.com arena, which is the current basketball Lakers and Kings and Sparks home. And then basketball is going to move to the Intuit Dome, which is going to be the new home for the Clippers, but that's under construction and won't get opened until the end of this year.
Far out.
So instead of they were going to renovate some things at UCLA and USC, nope, we're just going to use what other people are using. The most difficult part when you're looking at this stuff is none of the LA28 official documents use the current names of stadiums and venues. They don't call it SoFi. They don't call it Crypto.com, which you expect. So for the rest of us normal people, it was very confusing. I had to go through the venue plan and then look at a lot of media articles to figure out what was what in real life. Be prepared to get lost in LA because nobody is going to know where anything is. And your maps.com is going to have the official name, not the Olympic name.
Right, because the naming rights are advertising, and the Olympics famously does not have advertising as part of the stadium plans. That's happening in Paris too, because Bercy Arena is not. That's not the regular name. That's what the name that we know, but
Correct.
finding it on a map is a little bit of a different story. I'm like, oh yeah, that's called something else. It'll be interesting to see how they rename these to be Olympics and Paralympics friendly. But I'm glad they did a revamp of the venue project, just because if they're reusing existing stuff besides pumping money into things that may not need a ton of renovation, well, they're not pumping money into things that may not really need renovating, but they're renovating it just because of the Olympics and they want it to be fancier. This will be a nice way to reuse stuff and kind of stick a little bit better with that Olympic Agenda 2020 +5.
They're also using a lot of legacy stadiums. So you will see, I believe it's artistic swimming is taking place in a venue that was used for 1932.
Very
So
nice.
you will see a lot of that. So they are leaning into the history as well. So if you want to take a whole look at this venue plan, it's at the LA28 site. It's highlighted on their homepage. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. But be prepared that SoFi Stadium, it's not SoFi Stadium. Welcome to TKFLASTAN.
It is the time of the show where we check in with our team Keep the Flame Alive. These are past guests and listeners of the show who make up our citizenship of TKFLASTAN. Big week in trials.
Right. So now the U.S. Olympic trials in track and field have started. We have a few people there. Deanna Price finished second in a wild women's hammer throw competition. So she qualifies to Paris. Kenny Bednarek finished second in the men's 100 meter with a personal best. He also qualifies for Paris in that event. His men's 200 meter will be on Saturday, June 29th. And Katie Moon will compete on Sunday, June 30th in women's pole vault.
So I did watch, I had some of the track and field trials, I was following online, and then I was able to watch for the men's 100 meter. And the hammer throw, I just could not follow what happened because Brooke Anderson, who got the world lead or had the world lead, fouled out on her first 3 throws and could not continue on. So she amazingly is not going to Paris. Deanna finished second, which is great. I'm so thrilled for her that she seems to be healthy again and is throwing well. The woman who placed first is Annette Echikumoki, who placed 12th at the 2022 World Championships. She had been trying to compete for Nigeria, and because she's Nigerian American, that did not work out. And so she came back to compete for America and is now going in as the top American headed into Paris. It was just an amazing competition that I did not see if they showed hardly any of it on TV. Seems like maybe it was on Peacock, but the focus on track in the track and field trials seems to be ongoing. I don't want to say poor Kenny. I love the fact that Kenny is one of our people because he just seems like an afterthought to the announcers. Otto Bolden was like, "Oh, and Kenny Bednarek is a sleeper."
A sleeper? I mean, I realize this isn't his best event, but yeah, I was pretty annoyed because they talked much more about Christian Coleman, who finished 4th. And I'm like, dude, Kenny has an Olympic medal. He's one of the best relay runners in the world. Why wouldn't you think he's a factor here?
Right.
Never mind how well he was running in the previous rounds. I mean, yeah, everyone wants to talk about Noah Lyles, and rightfully so. I mean, he is expected to be the best in the 100 meters. But Kung Fu Kenny came for them and said, "Excuse me, I'm here," and was such a gentleman in the post-race interview. He knows how the media talks about him. He's not stupid. He's very aware. We spoke to him. He knows exactly what the press is saying and that he gets forgotten. And he's like, "Yeah, I just ran my race." I'm like, "Yes, you did. And you beat everybody but Noah Lyles. Look at you."
Right. You go, Kenny. I'm so excited for him. So excited that he qualified in that. Hope he does well in the men's 200. At swimming trials, Bobby Fink won the 1500 meter free, 12 seconds ahead of second place. And also, Book Club Claire and listener Brittany got to spend some time at the trials. And listener David was there because he found me in the media center, which was awesome. So lots of Shuklistanis at swimming trials, which was really great to see.
Andrew Capobianco won the U.S. diving Olympic trials in the men's 3-meter springboard, which means he is headed to Paris.
Also headed to Paris is B-boy Jeffro, who qualified through the Olympic qualifier series.
And congratulations to Tom Kelly, who at Ski Utah's Yeti Awards received the President's Award for his work in skiing.
And that is going to do it for this episode. Let us know what you think of paraswimming.
Find us on X, YouTube, and Instagram at FlameAlivePod. Send us an email at flamealivepod@gmail.com. Call or text us at 208-352-6348. That's 208-FLAME-IT. Chat with us and other fans on our Facebook group, Keep the Flame Alive Podcast, and sign up for our weekly newsletter with even more Olympic and Paralympic info for you at our website, flamealivepod.com.
On Thursday, we are going to talk gymnastics, and we'll have a variety of gymnasts that we spoke to at the Team USA Media Summit. We so hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, tell a friend about the show. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep the flame alive.